Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to the Art of Game Mastery's Finding Path stream. I know this is a day late. We yesterday I had some issues with power outages due to a storm up in the Western Washington area, and yeah, it was. I mean, I did get my power back eventually, but then internet was out for a while, so we just ended up calling it. And we thought we really want to do this episode, so let's let's do it tomorrow, which is a bit unorthodox for us, but hopefully it works out. We'll see how this goes. I'm John, co-host Jack. Let's see if I got this direction right. Yeah, I got it right this time. So today we're going to be talking about something a little Halloween-esque. We call it Bringing Your Dead to Life, which, as the name implies, is going to be about how to take, the undead creatures in the rule book, as well as create your ones you create yourself, how to spice them up, add a bit of uniqueness to them and throw a wrench in your character's plans. I think we're mostly going to be focused on creatures this time around, though there, thanks to a couple of the recent books from Paizo, there are some actually like ancestries that kind of fit this theme as well. So we didn't really plan to talk about that stuff, but as we were prepping for this session right before this, I was thinking, it might not be a bad thing to talk about. So maybe we'll get into it, maybe not. We'll see what happens. So I think first we're going to start with zombies, which is everyone's favorite undead, I think. Just because they're so ubiquitous, I think, with not only the tabletop RPGs, like Dungeons and Dragons, whatnot, but also just in the horror theme in general. Like zombies are something that everyone knows about, whether they're into horror or not. Yeah, Jack, you want to talk a little bit about what kind of abilities zombies have and whatnot? And actually, I'm going to bring up, see if I can do this after the fact. Nethys has an awesome page on when you're creating your zombies, what kind of abilities, like ideas for abilities to add to them and whatnot. So let me see if I can.
They really do. So while he's pulling that up, how's it going, everybody? We're going to talk a little bit about zombies and how to add them into your game to kind of bring your dead to life. Let's start off with some zombie rot. This is what you pretty much stole the word I wanted to use about being ubiquitous. When you see Night of the Living Dead and a lot of those like Walking Dead movies, there is this overwhelming presence of some kind of disease or something that is spread throughout the land where just you get touched by them, you get bit, you get scratched, and then you contract it, and then pretty soon you're going to be joining them as part of the Walking Dead. And it's really not that prevalent in Dungeons and Dragons, and I noticed that there is only one kind of reference for it in Pathfinder. So if you're playing D&D 5th edition, steal this idea from Pathfinder, put it in your games, give your zombies some virulent way of spreading their necromancy. A lot of times the necromancers in your games kind of steal the show with, having magic, being able to raise the dead. So it spreading via disease kind of gets thrown by the wayside. But this right here is exactly what we're looking for to kind of make the combat a little more interesting. So I think this is pretty much a graveyard smash right here. We've got an infected creature, that's you, can't heal damage that you take from this disease. So that right there is going to get your players' attention. They're going to take just a little bit of damage at the second stage. So start off with like 1d6 of negative damage. If you're doing, John, what's the element type in 5th edition that would be associated with negative?
Do
they call it?
It's negative. It's just called negative.
It's not called necrotic.
It's just they have negative and positive damage in 2e, so it'd be negative damage. But
right.
You're talking about zombie rot right now, right? In particular?
Absolutely.
Okay. Just making sure I had the right thing up.
For switching it over into, yeah, we got that. For switching it into 5th edition, I think they have necrotic damage. Does that sound right?
Correct.
Right. So 1d6 negative for Pathfinder, necrotic for 5th edition, and then when you advance to the next stage, instead of taking it, looks like you would take it daily, you would start taking, it looks like it goes all the way up to the 4th, 5th stage, but once you take enough damage from that and you're dead, you rise up as a plague zombie or a zombie with this plague rot. It's pretty straightforward. Infected starts taking damage. What did Ayla say? infected. Not if I make my fort save. Yeah, gotta make that fort save.
Yeah, I
Okay,
mean, it's
so that would be
actually, I mean, it is a fairly low fort save as well. It's only a DC 18. This is a level 1 creature, so you're probably going to
and
be
now
throwing it at your party early. I actually threw these at you guys in Shifting Sands early on, but I actually made a mistake and kind of forgot about Zombie Rot, so no one went down anyway, but is what it
right,
is.
so it starts off at DC 18. Now that is a scale. So if you do have a chance to look at some of those other monsters that have the zombie rot, they'll
Hmm.
list a new DC that's based
Right.
off of their level.
For
So
the Plague
a
Zombie in
constitution.
particular, it's an 18.
Mhm. So like if you look at some of the other ones that zombie rot can affect, they'll all say that they have zombie rot and it'll give them a new disease. It's more looking at the individual creatures. So 18 is really low, but as you get higher, you can scale it. If you're playing 5th edition, that would be a Constitution saving throw. 18 would be pretty rough, I think. Uh, can't dump those gains, right?
Yeah, it looks like none of the other zombies in the actual official books have zombie rot, but you can totally add zombie rot to any zombie you create. Just another ability, and the DC you would set based on the saving throw DC's component when you're creating that creature, which is in the game mastery guide. So going back to these various abilities, there's some really good ones in here. Disgusting. I don't know how to pronounce this word. Pustules. Is that correct?
Pustules,
Yeah.
gross.
This one,
Nobody.
I did get a chance to use on you guys, and it was fun. The zombie is covered in pustules that rupture when it takes any piercing damage or any critical hit. In either case, adjacent creatures are hit with a vile fluid, causing them to become sickened one unless they succeed at a fortitude save. This is a really fun one because generally I like to avoid stifling people's enthusiasms on like critical hits, but this isn't super like a big deal. So I think it adds a fun little like, oh, I got a critical hit. Oh shit, now I'm sickened. So I think it's a fun little like slight that isn't too crazy that, takes away the fun out of the game, but also still adds a little surprise element to things like that. If you have any rogues in your party, this is one they're gonna get affected by this usually first because most of their damage is piercing. Um, yeah, it's a fun little ability. And there's feast. If the zombie is
So
adjacent to the helpless or unconscious creature or a deceased creature that died in the past hour, the zombie can feast upon its flesh to heal itself. This restores an amount of hit points equal to the zombie's level. If the creature is alive, the zombie deals damage equal to its jaws, fist, or claw
that is a
damage. This one's
that is a
brutal.
great that one is a great one to use in combat when you have one zombie go down and you see another one just start eating its ally, because that is just going to,
Yeah.
it's probably gonna like shake up your players a little bit. Like, why is he eating? Oh, and they're gonna realize pretty darn quick.
Now, to really play this effectively, you would also be feasting on downed players, which is
Ooh.
very brutal because they take damage when they're unconscious. They're going to have to remake that save and b- potentially become further dying or even dead at that point. So it's quite
Nobody
brutal.
like
But that would
that is
be a more realistic way of playing it, I think.
Oh yeah, that is vicious, John. That right there, hitting a down player. Everybody already has, enough. It gets really tense when you start rolling those death saves.
Yeah. Plague Ridden
That-
is the next one they have. The zombie carries a plague that can create more of its own kind. This functions as the plague zombie rot, except at stage 5, the victim rises as another of the zombie's type rather than the plague zombie. This is basically just zombie rot, just a more generic version of it. Rotting
That's
aura, the zombie emits an aura of rot and disease that causes wounds to fester and turn sour. Any living creature that starts its turn within 10 feet of the zombie and is not at full hit points takes 1d6 damage as his wounds fester. The damage increases by 1d6 every 6 hours the zombie has. Or,
six
sorry,
levels.
6 levels the zombie has. Creatures that take a critical hit from the zombie also take this damage immediately. This one doesn't seem
Ooh.
very potent at first, but it adds up quite quickly.
I like this one because it feels like it's gonna sneak up on you.
Mhm.
You wade into battle and you don't quite notice, that aura that it might have. And if you're not doing a recall knowledge in Pathfinder, then you're not going to see it until you take that
Yeah.
first wound, and then the players will be like, "Wait, why am I taking damage?"
I think that's a good point. I think a lot of players don't. I mean, myself included. I forget to do this all the time as well. But a lot of players don't take advantage of recall knowledge very often, unless it's like just like a hand me out given by the GMs. Like, hey, why don't you roll me a free recall knowledge check? But like, I feel like a lot of players don't want to spend their action to recall that knowledge, and I feel like it's such an integral part of Pathfinder 2e because it really lets you like capitalize on those strategic decisions that you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. So actually, I really I like your point there about, you know, if you don't do that, a lot of these things are going to catch you off guard. You know, unless you're super familiar with the monster manual or whatever, and or the bestiaries, and you know what's coming, but then you run into the metagame point. So,
and welcome to the T virus. Up next,
Unkillable. The zombie is nigh unkillable. The zombie loses its weakness to slashing and gains resistance against all damage equal to its level, minimum of 3. And it gains weakness equal to twice its level, minimum of 6 to critical hits. Increase the zombie's level by 1 if you give it this ability. So this basically just a flat out across the board buff to zombies. Zombies being weak to slash in general, slashing damage, is kind of a really useful thing for the players because it allows them to knock them out really quickly and have less chances to deal with the other abilities like Plague Rot and Rotting Ore and whatnot. When you take that away, now they're more on a somewhat even playing field, and there's a lot more opportunities for these other kind of effects to fester.
This really gives a meaning to the players when they're making decisions, whether you're playing 5th or Pathfinder, about if you're going to be using slashing weapons or blunt weapons. A lot of players, they go for those 2 blades, they go for that axe with that slashing damage, and this will show, conversely to like a skeleton who is going to have the resistance. Like, this gives the players like a meaningful decision process. Like, they're choosing these type of weapons, they're going to go for the zombies, and then you throw this nigh unkillable at them, and then they're not even going to get the benefit of it.
I think in a more classic style of game, like a dungeon crawl, like a straight up dungeon crawl where you're just going in and out of a dungeon over and over again, killing stuff, collecting loot, coming out, resting, going back in. I think that's where this kind of stuff really, like these resistances and weaknesses and whatnot, really shine, because it lets the players really plan their attack. Like, they go in, they counter some zombies, they make a strategic retreat. They're like, okay, these things are weak to slashing. I normally carry a maul, but maybe this time I'm going to go in with a greatsword, because we know what we're up against. We know what their weakness is. It's more effective to do that. Or maybe I'll bring both, just to, so we can do a skeletons, which are weak against bludgeoning, and zombies, which are against slashing. So it really adds a bit of planning to the characters or the players when they encounter these kind of things. And I think that's actually one interesting aspect of that style of play in general, is that there's so much planning and strategy involved that you kind of lose in like a more modern sandbox or epic fantasy, where players typically have their weapon of choice or weapon type of choice, and they just stick to it. I don't know, maybe a fighter might be a little more willing to do this kind of thing in a more modern campaign. I don't know.
Kind of pair weapons that are, not identical. It would make for some interesting builds if players are thinking about, having a baton or a mace in one hand and a blade in the other.
So there was a manga / anime that I was, and actually it's a light novel, based on a light novel, but I was really into it for a while. I just kind of dropped it for other things for now, but might go back to it later. But I can't remember the name of it, but I was really impressed with the monster abilities they had in that game. And one of the unique things, or in that show and book and whatnot, and one of the unique things about it is that it was actually built around the idea of skills and abilities. Like all the monsters, all the people had skills and abilities from birth and like whatnot. And I thought the abilities and skills they came up with were kind of ingenious. And one of them that really caught my attention was called the Six Zombie. And when you first encounter it, you're like, why is it called the Six Zombie? It just looks like a regular zombie. And then you come to find out every time you kill it, a piece of it breaks off. And it ends up having six pieces: the hands, or the arms, the legs, the torso, the head, and I forget the other two. But so basically it's basically six creatures in one, and they all act independently, and then you have to like kill them all off in order to kill the whole thing. And I thought it was a really neat idea, and it's something I've been wanting to implement in Pathfinder 2e because I think it lends itself well to that kind of thing. And it also solves the problem of, you know, oftentimes you, as a GM, you kind of wade between the idea of sending a lot of monsters at your party, one big powerful monster, a somewhat powerful monster, and a couple minions. Like, it kind of solves that for you because it starts off as a powerful monster, and then as you hack away at it, it turns into multiple monsters, and it kind of creates this interesting dynamic in the combat. There was in 5e, there's a guy who did a blog post, and I wish I could remember his name or what the name of the blog was. But he came up with the idea of, you know, 5e notoriously has the problem of scaling large solo enemies against a party of X, right? And he came up with this idea of, well, if it's maybe it's a large single enemy in flavor, but there's nothing keeping it from being multiple enemies in practice, right? Like, you could just have a single enemy, but it's made up of multiple components that each has its own turn and initiative. So then it's no different than having multiple enemies. It's just flavor-wise, it's one creature.
That's genius. Actually, that's really smart. A lot of like old school RPGs kind of do that, where there's different parts to the boss.
Yeah.
You know, they're gonna have turrets, or I think of Chrono Trigger instantly when you mentioned that. There's like a dragon tank that has like a head, a wheel, and its like main body.
Yep.
And depending on what you take out, it's going to determine its, you know, what part or what ability is the biggest threat.
And I think in those kind of games you're talking about, another interesting aspects of those different components is they usually have different weaknesses and resistances and whatnot. So like in what order you take them out is usually somewhat important, right? Because it helps to be efficient. And I think that zombies or undead in general lend themselves well to that kind of component approach, because, you know, you rip off a zombie's arm, they're not going to die again, right? Like, or you rip off a skeleton. Or like, I think one of the abilities when we get to skeletons is like it rips off one of the ribs and throws it at the creature. Like, I thought that was genius.
Missile, gotta love that.
So I think undead are a perfect time to.
That you're describing that's literally in Pathfinder. I'll have to look it up later, but exactly like what you're describing. It's like a pile of corpses. Like, it's like an entire legion. It's an entire army of corpses, like kind of put together.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. I'll have to check that out.
Oh, you ready to talk about skeletons?
Yeah, that seems like a good segue to me. So let's go into skeletons. Like zombies, they provide a few, you know, generic ones up front with some ideas, but they lean into very much like, you know, this isn't everything. You can go crazy with undead. So here's some example abilities. Maybe come up with your own, but try to strive to create your own to make it interesting and unique. You want to talk about some of these abilities, Jack?
I've got a bone to pick with a few of these here.
There's the pun.
Yeah, I've been dishing them out. I'm digging them up. So let's exhume some of these options here. We've got the Blaze Source, which is, it's iconic to me for people who've played a lot of Castlevania. We don't have D&D Dad tonight, but Kaz is, you know, you love to laugh at those, Kaz. If you play a lot of Castlevania, you have fought against skeletons that are flaming, and I don't know who came up with this idea of flaming skeletons. Like, it's not in any, would you say, I don't think it's in any, like, original mythos, you know, just like, they were trying to think of, how do we make these skeletons more intimidating? I don't know, let's put flames around them. And so if you played any Castlevanias or, like, Ravenloft, lighting up a skeleton and giving it that fire.
What's that Marvel hero that rides the motorcycle and
Oh my god.
Nicolas Cage played him. Ghost Rider.
That would be
Ghost Rider.
negative Ghost Rider,
Yeah.
negative. That's
Uh,
that is a perfect hey Ayla, good luck with your game. Have a great night.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us.
But yeah, I don't. Yeah, I think you're right. I can't think of any like
You totally
mythology,
got
like
one.
from cultural mythology that has that kind of idea off the top of my head. But it's somewhere along the line, it someone thought of it and started implementing it into pop culture. I think it's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's so I'm gonna start calling it Ghost Rider from now on. And giving your creature like switching up its immunities and weaknesses is like we just talked about like that with the T virus option for
mhm.
the zombies, like switching it up so that they're immune to fire and then weak to cold. I absolutely love that.
Or maybe you have a White Walker style where they're more cold oriented and weak to fire, right? You could also go
That's
the other way. So
yeah. World of Warcraft definitely did that with all of the Northrend campaign. It was just full of frozen zombies. There's so much undead in that. I mean that was the
well,
expansion that had the
you had an
Death Knight.
entire player race of undead in that game, right?
There was Forsaken.
Yeah. So I don't know.
So
I think elements and resistances and weaknesses are where you can really get fancy with undead because there's really nothing stopping you from doing anything with them because they're already dead, right? They could be anything. They could be vine zombies that are.
yeah, what's the worst thing that's gonna happen? You gonna kill them?
So yeah, I definitely encourage GMs to get really creative with their undead and kind of steer away from using just the plain ones in the bestiary. Maybe at level like 1, maybe 2, where the players are still vulnerable.
I
You
like to use
might.
it when I have like a bunch of zombies to kind of flesh out a combat. So one of the first combats we did in Tagasia, there was some undead, and I was trying to give you guys a flavor for what was going to be entailed in the combat. So as a GM, you're planning out these combats, and you kind of want to set the tone. And fighting undead in Tagasia was kind of like an upfront, teaser as to what's going to be happening. And as you guys can see now, you can look back on, like your previous fights where you guys are in a crypt and you're fighting a bunch of different undead. I kind of did that from the get-go with each of these skeletons or undead. You can make the fight more interesting by kind of giving everyone a different ability.
Mhm.
Even at level 1, you can still give one guy a special ability to kind of make them stand out from the pack.
Kind of like the
And as you get
commander.
into higher levels.
Yeah, so along those lines, another thing I like to do with undead just across the board is I find that undead are a species, I guess, that lends itself well to strength in numbers. So I like to, instead of having like a small number of powerful undead, I much prefer to have a lot of weaker undead. You know what I mean? So like reduce the average level of the creatures, but then add a bunch of them, and kind of get those flanking bonuses and whatnot. Now that you can't go too crazy with this, the way Pathfinder 2e math works, if you go too far below the players, then you basically lose all effectiveness altogether of them. So you do have to be careful about it. But going like, for instance, if it's a level 1 party, maybe putting a bunch of level -1 zombies there.
Yeah, you can fix it up by just reducing the level of all of your undead and then giving them some fun abilities.
Yeah.
And that'll just make the fight more memorable.
But if you think of like pop culture, right? One of the things that makes undead, whether zombie or otherwise, most scary, so to speak, is that they're usually presented in large, overwhelming numbers. That it's like
Mhm.
you have to wade through them in order to get anywhere, rather than like each one of them is weak on its own, right? You can hack off its head or whatever, no problem. But once when there's a whole horde of them, that's when things get dicey, right?
They definitely got strength in numbers.
So some of these other abilities, bloody, the skeleton is covered in dripping blood and gains fast healing equals level. I thought this one was cool because it's not really a new attack, or it's not really uh, changing its weakness or resistance or whatever, but it's basically giving it a permanent condition, right? And I thought that was a neat approach. It also makes them a bit more resilient because they have that fast healing. So that commander undead that Jack just talked about, this might be a good one for them because it ensures they stick around a little longer, even if the party kind of goes after them first.
Yeah, that makes people who like to kind of, you know, 1,000 cuts
Hmm.
slowly, you know, or especially like with AoE damage in Pathfinder, it's way less.
Yeah.
And so dishing out that, you know, by numbers, if you know, you're hitting 5 targets and you're getting way more damage output using AoE, but if you're hitting enemies that are going to start healing as soon as they take hits instead of like a fighter who is, you know, going to get a setup with flanking and is going to try to, you know, trip the creature to get that increased chance so that they deliver a crit and, you know, dish out enough damage to kill them in one blow or enough damage where it makes a bigger dent. I feel like a bloody skeleton is going to definitely stifle area of effect damage or especially damage over time effects.
Yeah, and then the next one is Bone Missile, which is the one I talked about with the rib, right? Where he yanks out a rib out of his rib cage and you basically uses it as a javelin. He just throws it at somebody. And I thought, like, flavor wise, that is perfect, right? Uh, the skeleton does lose HP, which I thought was funny.
It's so humorous. Like this is somebody like whoever designed this ability. I want to know who, so I can give like props to the producer because this is clearly like some labor of love right here. Taking it's so thematic. Like as you read it, you cannot help but imagine an undead being like, "I'm out of arrows," and he just rips out a rib. You know,
It's interesting that it uses the attack bonus of whichever the skeleton's other strikes is the highest attack bonus and deals piercing damage. If you're creating new undead, you could get really creative with this and make this a pretty potent attack. And of course, if it's a higher level, the sacrifice is that it loses a substantial amount of HP. It could kind of be like more of a last stand thing. I feel like at that point, which would be kind
it
of
has
cool
it has the
thematically.
potential to be very comedic with a player being like, "You're out of arrows," and they're like, you know, they get this last laugh, or they're like, "Oh yeah, I might be out of arrows." Yoink.
It'd be really funny too if it was, like I said, if like they're doing that act would basically take them out in the process. It would be like a fun like little martyrdom, right?
Oh no, they rip out their rib and then they die from the damage.
Yeah, but
And
they
then,
they die right after they get that last attack off. Like maybe they're at like 1 HP, right? And they're like, screw it, I'm dying anyway. Like taking you out with me, you know? That's kind of
that's
I think that's where I would use that ability most often. I feel like, especially as a higher level undead. There's some other funny ones too, like collapse. I think is pretty brilliant. Basically, if the skeleton takes a critical hit, they can turn it into a normal hit by just falling, like collapsing into a pile of bones, and then they can use an action to reform on their next turn, which I thought is a really it's a reaction too, which I thought is a really useful thing for an undead to have. I would
that
probably
is,
add this to basically any skeleton I make
yeah.
ever.
I think every skeleton should have access to this ability. It kind of reminds me of the Stalfo Knights from Legend of Zelda.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Explosive death. When the skeleton is destroyed, its bones shatter and explode as the necromantic energy holding it together is released. This is the same kind of like martyrdom kind of thing. Like, what I
Hey,
don't
this
get though
ability is
is
amazing.
so this
I
isn't just a passive ability. That's interesting.
I had this ability when I was playing a cleric in 3.5, and it's very clear that this ability has kind of evolved from 3.5 Pathfinder and into second edition because this was a feat that I had taken for my undead cleric, and it was I think acid damage, but this one here is slashing, close enough. But
Yeah, I mean,
this was extremely useful because I had an army of skeletons up against a dragon, and I couldn't even really hit the dragon, but I just sent my skeletons within melee range, and the dragon just killed all my skeletons and
it's
took a ton of acid damage.
clever. But I don't know why. I'm wondering if they have equivalents of this in other types of creatures as well, because I don't think this should be specific to zombies. I think this is a real, I mean, skeletons. I feel like this is a
Yeah,
really interesting ability that has a lot of potential in various types of creatures.
I have
Um,
not seen this ability used that much in Pathfinder. I remember it being in fifth edition. There was quite a few, like, um, maybe I'm thinking of fourth because I love the monster manual in fourth edition, where like the monster was like had volatile acids in their body or fire. There's like some fire beetles or scarabs that when you killed them, they like detonated and made like a little firebomb.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the whole explosion on death is kind of a neat mechanic. And again, you see this replicated a lot in various video game RPGs as well, and it's always done to great effect in my opinion. So,
Mhm.
I'd like to see more of these kind of abilities, and kind of a note to myself: start adding these kind of things to more monsters I create. Screaming Skull. The skeleton removes its. This one's really funny. The skeleton removes its skull and throws it, making a jaws attack with a range of 20 feet. It then attempts to demoralize each foe within 10 feet of the target. The head bounces, rolls, and even flies back, returning the skeleton to the start of its next turn. The skeleton is blind to then. So first of all, this is really good action economy because it's basically 2 actions to do, or takes 2 actions to do 3 actions. First, interact action to move your skull off your head or off your neck. Second action to throw it, and a third action to
Demoralize.
demoralize. Which
Wow.
I'm a little.
Okay, so this is what I'm
Why does the
seeing. Okay?
demoralize happen after the jaws attack? I feel like it should be the other way around.
Yes, yes, I agree. I totally agree. But that would be extremely powerful.
It
But
would, but it would also
this
be
is very
awesome.
thematic. Are you envisioning what I'm envisioning when I read this?
Well, I'm envisioning like very cartoony,
I'm thinking of
rip it off and throw it and stumble
Ichabod
around.
Crane.
What was
Have
that?
you watched? Do you know Ichabod
Think
Crane
about Crane,
from
yeah,
Sleepy Hollow?
yeah,
So their skull should be a jack-o'-lantern, and they pull off their pumpkin head and hurl it at them.
yeah.
This would be
Pumpkinhead
perfect
creatures are
for a
actually. Do
Halloween
those
game.
exist in Pathfinder 2e? Like
I don't
raw?
think not in 2E, but I'm pretty sure they are in some of the D&D editions I've played. I remember there was a
Jack-o'-lanterns are fun.
Scarecrow in 5th edition. Yeah, we had a Scarecrow monster in 5th.
I can't recall, to be honest. It's been a long time since I've run a 5th edition game.
Well, we
um,
played one against I don't know if you were there for that game, but you were in that game. Back in
at Comic Quest,
yes, at Comic Quest. There was I think it was 2 scarecrows.
I don't recall. I remember we fought some jackals and whatnot on like a Halloweeny themed thing, but I don't remember. It's been a long time. Um, but I do really like this ability. I think they're for a higher level undead. I might actually swap the demoralize and the jaws attack for something a bit more devastating. It is a 2 action, ability, right? So,
I
the
want
one
an
thing
exploding
I find interesting about this is the arrest trajectory psi cantrip from the psychic playtest that's out, or the monk's ability whose name I can't remember, but basically lets you like catch a projectile and then optionally throw it back. So one, if you catch the projectile, it basically loses its head, right? Because it can't return at that point. Um, but if you do throw it back, that would be even more comedic because now this thing's returning back to it. It just hits it in the chest or whatever, and it kind of like has to pick it up off the ground or whatever. I don't know. I think it'd be really funny as well.
and
And I don't know if they
that's
considered those kind of abilities when they made this, but
don't throw this skeleton head at your friendly alchemist because they'll put a special vial in the head just for you. Return to sender.
does Alchemist have a reaction that lets them do that?
No, but I would totally allow
Yeah,
that.
that'd be a fun one. Even like
And then
skeleton head aside, maybe just take projectiles. Like a projectile comes at them, they arrest it, and then quickly slap a potion on the end of it and throw it back.
it was exactly like a fire Molotov or something.
Yeah.
This last one is totally like Tagasia, the skeleton rose.
Thick
That actually
briars
came
has
from.
grown through the skeleton's bones, covering it in red roses with inch-long thorns. The skeleton's unarmed melee strikes deal additional piercing damage equal to 1/3 the skeleton's level, minimum 1 damage. I don't like that. That's a little too much math to be convenient.
One every 3 levels.
Yeah, I know. It's just it's annoying. It's not convenient. But anyway, at the end of each of its turns, if the skeleton has caused piercing damage with its thorns, it regains HP equal to its level, minimum of 1 again. Each time the skeleton regains HP in this way, another rose blooms. That's really cool thematically, and it's quite powerful too.
I feel like it got cut off. You know, like it says each time it regains, or like it grows another rose blossom. So like they just like left it in the GM's hands of like, what does it mean to have another rose
Yeah.
blossom, kind of grow on this creature? I feel like there's room to improve right here.
Yeah, there's definitely some more stuff you could add there on add onto that one, which is an interesting point. Um, and again, these are all just suggestions, right? Like you could modify these, replace these, do whatever you want with them. And I think that's really what they intended when it came to undead, because all the undead have these kind of ability lists that a lot of the other types of creatures don't necessarily have. And then they kind of took this and ran with it. Like as you see, like down here, members. There's a lot of different kinds of skeletons. There's skeleton giants, skeleton horses, skeleton harpies, skeleton champions. You can really make anything a skeleton.
The ones that I used in Tagasia, they were
I'm surprised there's no skeleton dragon.
the skeletons that I used had I think it was the yellow moss. That was the what I used for the root of for a dredged. What was that called?
In Tagasi, you mean?
Yeah, they had straight from the bestiary, I think it was 2. There was a skeleton that had like a type of fungus.
Hmm.
It was exactly what I was looking for when I was trying to make the creatures, before, because I started making Tagasia before second edition came out.
Right.
Of
Yeah, I'm not
course, I
sure.
can't find.
I don't see anything in second edition, at least, for skeletons like that.
I'll find it eventually.
So let's talk a little bit about ghosts next, which I didn't pull up. So let me do that real quick.
So I think we had
Not the trait.
Spirit Anchor was the curse that we wanted to cover. Spooky nights and holidays, we're gonna have curses are perfect. So if you're thinking of like Bewitched, where there's a curse, witches are going to be putting curses. So throwing curses around. If you're looking for a really good one to kind of throw at your players, this is around level 13. So I think it would be appropriate for any group around 10 to 15. You just adjust that DC as necessary. Spirit Anchor is, as soon as they realize what they're cursed with, your players are probably going to freak out. This curse prevents your soul from moving on after death. If you die while affected, your spirit is anchored to the material plane, and you become a ghost or an appropriate incorporeal undead.
So this blends itself really well to revenants. So thematically, revenants are creatures who have died or some kind of grudge and something left unfinished, and they come back as a incorporeal being, basically hell bent on completing or resolving that grudge, whatever it is. I think that giving the players an option to go this route when they die is a interesting play. Normally when a player dies, their soul goes off to whatever your realm is in your world, and then it can be brought back if it's willing via some kind of resurrection spell or feat or whatever, and then. But maybe that's not what happens, right? Maybe they have something left unfinished and they come back as a revenant instead, and their soul can't pass on to the afterlife to be resurrected until they complete whatever task is given them. This gives a bit of adds a bit of a story element to their death, gives them your party a new quest. I mean, assuming that the player is willing to work with the revenant to complete their goal, then your party kind of gets a new side quest that they can go on, right? And it adds a bit more, makes their death more interesting, right? I always say that death is the least interesting thing that can happen to a player, and I stand by that.
Death is only the beginning.
Yeah, so I mean, whether we talked about capturing the players in the past or doing things other than letting them die. But this is also an option. Maybe they do die, but they come back really quickly as a revenant and have to do something to let their soul ascend, right?
Yep.
You kind of did this in Tagasia, Jack, with one of our party members.
I recently did. Before I get into the Revenant, I found Yellow Musk Thrall, which I was looking for.
Hmm.
If anyone is interested, check out Yellow Musk Thrall
Is that a
or
2E or a 1E creature?
2E.
Okay.
It's a creature, it's a -1 CR, and it's basically what happens when you mix plants with necromancy.
I mean, I think
So,
that's a underutilized theme there.
absolutely. There needs to be good druids and kind of,
Yeah.
evil druids, and there's not a whole lot of blight or pestilence. And I feel like it was much more prevalent in 3.5 and Pathfinder 1. And I feel like 2E kind of went a little cartoony with the druids not having access to the darker sides. If you even look at 5th edition, they've got a circle that's kind of dedicated to
Yeah.
fungus. So
I think at some point we'll see something there.
I hope so.
Whether
I
it's
think
new
that's
primal spells that are necromantic or a
so.
new druid subclass.
So for a revenant, what the party is, you guys are like level 9, 10. You guys are 10? You're about, I think you guys
We
just
just hit
leveled up to
11.
11.
Yeah, we just hit
Right.
11.
So to give you an idea, their CR is 10. The party went down into a crypt. They went to the very end of the crypt and they skipped kind of all of the side stuff, and they didn't realize that there was different rituals being cast to kind of bolster the undead. So they knew something nefarious was going on, but they went straight to the end and fought a very hard fight, and they decided to do the smart thing and run, which I don't know any party group who would decide to run from a fight. You guys did an amazing job. That
I try to run all the time.
you're playing a rogue, so
Yeah.
you tend to be kind of controlling the crowd from a different perspective. You're usually, taking out the snipers and flanking the enemy. So your guy has a lot of mobility.
Yeah.
So we got to give it to you for doing, running that other part of the operation. But the party fled, and they lost one of the party members to a kind of like a demented creature that was kind of sucking their soul. And we resurrected the player. The player came back a little, a little scarred from their experience, and they went back down into the crypt. And what did they find at the bottom of the crypt, John?
Themselves. Well, their
All
other
of the
self.
people who died down there were brought back as undead, and I
Yeah.
felt I didn't really have to do anything. The stage was completely set. As soon as they saw what was down there, they were like, "Oh no, that's me,"
Yeah.
and the party obliterated their undead selves. They were like, "Nope, not having it." It was a massacre. That particular undead had plans. I was hoping to really get to use them, but I don't even think they got a single turn in. It's kind of
Yeah,
sad.
that's kind of a different way of running a revenant in that it becomes a copy of the soul, right? Um, Another way you could run it is the soul can't be resurrected until the revenant deals with
Mhm.
whatever stuff it's got to deal with.
They got to do that geese, that quest.
Yeah.
They got to complete that job.
So there's different ways you could kind of cut that cake, right? Um, and really, it's a fantasy game, so you could do whatever the hell you want, and
There's
sky's the limit. Well,
there's more than one way to raise a zombie.
yeah.
I think
So
revenants
let's
are kind
see.
of
We
either
didn't really go into ghosts yet. So we talked about revenants, which
right. We did.
is
Oh,
kind
we
of
did
a
curse.
type of ghost, not entirely, but
Yeah, I skipped around with the curse. What do we got for the incorporeal creatures? Those guys. I mean, I like to think back to Morrowind, one of my first experiences in a really immersive role playing kind of game before hitting Daggerfell. In Morrowind, you go into your first kind of delve, little itty bitty dungeon. You get to that first treasure, you're feeling greedy, you find something, and then you get attacked by a ghost. And you have no way of dealing damage to it because you don't have a magic item, you don't have any silver weapons. So we were talking earlier about how skeletons, they've got their uh, resistance to slash, weakness to bludgeoning. Zombies are weak to the slash and resistant, and then ghosts show up and they're just like, you guys and your resistances. How do you feel about resistance to martial weapons?
We had one particular party member who wasn't super enthused with the ghost you throw at him.
Right, wasn't that the hottest take you've ever seen?
So a couple interesting things about ghosts too is that, well, one, they respawn. You can't actually like kill a ghost. You do, but it respawns again 2d4 days later, at the same place it died previously. Um,
Lots of extra stuff.
unless you complete a quest that lets their soul rise, right? Or expels the soul from unchains their soul from the material realm, basically. I thought this was really cool because it gives GMs a really easy way to introduce a side quest into the game.
I
It
think
makes
it
ghosts a bit more important as creatures than just some random trash to kill, right?
I like to use it as a reward system for players who like to do soul stealing.
Cough.
Did I cut out there? I thought I heard a bit of feedback.
No, that was
Yeah.
me.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So
Um,
there's always another way, and I think ghosts with their respawn, it's just you got to kill them with extra steps. You
yeah.
know, a really good vampire, players will beat him, and if they don't follow through, that's undead. It's a
Hmm.
type of undead. They don't follow through with the scattering their ashes or holy water on their tombstone. I feel like ghosts are the same way. You should, if you have a very focus fight that's based on a spirit or a ghost, you should definitely drive home. Like the NPCs should be in your party should kind of gear you up for like what you need for that, and the superstition should be hinted at ahead of time, and then you should definitely throw that at the players. If they don't follow through with that, then that ghost should come back and haunt them again.
Well, that leads me to the other interesting aspects of Ghost in Pathfinder 2e. I mean, assuming you know give them to them, but I mean they're sight bound, so basically they can't stray very far from where their material body died. So they
Mm.
very much are haunts, right? They're like these things that are kind of changed to the material world, to a specific place in the material world, and they're just destined to just roam a small area until their soul is unbound, right? So I think when you create a ghost, you should think really a lot about who they were before death, right? And give them a personality, give them ghosts aren't typically a creature you just throw at your player as something to kill. It's typically a plot device, is really what it is. Um, Whether it is just a small piece of another bigger plot, like maybe there's a quest to go deal with something, and it turns out a ghost is involved in it, and in order to solve the original quest, you now have to deal with getting this ghost out of the picture, or helping it, or however you want to see it. Or it can be a plot device all on its own. Like maybe the ghost itself is the initiator of the entire quest line. So there's a lot of things you can do there. They are flying creatures, of course, because they're incorporeal. They're not like walking on the ground or anything. They're typically hovering or floating or flying. Um, like pretty much all undead, they're negative healing. So, you cast heal, like the spell heal on them, and it'll uh, hurt them rather than heal them. And likewise, if you cast any positive or negative magic on them, like necromantic magic, then it'll actually heal them rather than hurt them. Um,
That heal spell in Pathfinder 2e, 5th edition, if you're paying attention, you definitely need a spell like Holy Nova. Being able to just drop down a healing spell, and its versatility for healing all your party members in the area for a
are you
decent
talking
amount of
about
AoE.
the holy, what, the one that's like puts a beacon on the ground you can touch? Are you talking about that one?
No, just the regular heal spell and
Oh,
just how versatile it is, because it's
yeah.
it's kind of the MVP in our group. Both the spellcasters were casting it every round because they were healing and dishing out
Yeah.
damage. And it
Also, I
was
mean,
keeping
yeah,
them.
definitely. I love the versatility of heal with the 1 to 3 actions. I thought was a really clever approach to that. Um, and I like that they're starting to add more and more of those kind of multiple the spells that can be used in multiple ways. Um, they are immune to death, as we mentioned, because of course they respawn. So like death effects are not going to have any effect on them. They're also immune to disease, paralyzed, poison, precision, and unconscious typically. And of course, you can pick and choose from any of those immunities and create them however you want when you're creating your own ghosts. These are just kind of typical things. They're also typically resistant, in this case, damage 5 to all damage, basically, except force, ghost touch, or positive damage. And they actually have double resistance, so resistance 10 to non-magical damage typically. So these things really don't like to be hit by, non-magical attacks. Or rather,
Hard to hit.
they don't like to take damage from non-magical attacks. They do like to be hit by them because it doesn't hurt them very much. And I do like that they provide some guidelines for scaling that resistance as the level of the creature scales up. Ghostly Hand. All ghosts have a Ghostly Hand unnamed attack that deals negative damage. It typically has the agile, finesse, and magical traits. Some ghosts wield ghostly memories of weapons they held in life, but the effect is the same. This is more of a flavor thing to give reason behind why they have weapons.
Right. It's like the opposite of ghost touch.
Right.
It's kind of explaining like what it feels like to get hit by a ghost. It's super thematic, and especially considering that, like, they'll be wielding whatever they held in their original life.
Yeah. That's like I said, you really want to sit down when you throw ghosts at your party. You really want to sit down and think about who they were, what their motivations were, what kind of thing, why were they chained to this world, and how can they get out of it? Because while ghosts can be quite deadly, as we'll see in the special abilities section, they're not really there just to be cannon fodder for your party. They're meant to be plot devices. First and
I think I
foremost.
used. Were you present for any of the ghost fights that we had in Tagasea?
No, that was when I took my break. That was when they were doing the south of Basaris, right?
Yep, South
Yeah.
Shore.
South Shore. Yeah, I was not. I was there for the very beginning when we first saw the ghosts, but I took my break shortly after there and didn't actually get a chance to interact with any of them.
When I was looking up like what they suggested using for ghosts, I kind of already had an idea about using them with a proper theme.
Mm-hmm.
So they were kind of living out, their death scene in this particular phase. Like, if you encountered them before that, they'd be living out like a normal life,
Mm-hmm.
just as they don't even realize that they're dead, kind of Sixth Sense Bruce Willis style. But for this particular scene, it was a very plot driven part where they're all kind of have a mob, a riot outside someone's house before they burn someone's house down. And it was extremely thematic because the goal was to kind of convey a little bit of story, a little bit of lore, so that the party was super invested by trying to figure out, if they can figure out the mystery, then they might not have to actually deliberately fight all these ghosts. And the party members ended up figuring out, what they needed to do, because the ghosts are, no matter what level you're pitting ghosts at your party, ghosts are hard to fight. And so the party was able to figure out what, they needed to do in that regards, and then, kind of banished all the ghosts and made it out scot-free. And of course, they got rewards for, completing the objective. You don't have to kill everything to get experience for it.
Right. Um, some of these special abilities are actually really cool. I like that a lot of them add conditions to the player in addition to dealing damage.
Oh yeah.
That really drives the point home that these are incorporeal beings and they're touching their souls directly rather than interacting with their physical bodies. Draining touch is an awesome one because I love the drain condition. I think it's super cool, and I think it's especially potent at lower levels when you don't have a lot of
Drained,
HP to begin with.
Drained is amazing. It just reminds me of the negative levels that people feared in 3.5 and Pathfinder. I don't
Mhm.
think did you ever play with any negative level stuff
No,
in the
I
older
didn't.
editions?
No.
Oh man. It was horrifying. Drained is a great compromise to that because it's much easier to manage. Like when we give you the drain condition, you can kind of figure, like stage 1, you just remove 1 per level of HP, Pretty straightforward.
Right. And an interesting thing about this particular ability is in addition to giving the drain condition, it actually siphons that HP and like the ghost regains HP equal to half its own level. Which to me, that's like what drain, how I envision drained in my head, right? Like that's my head canon of how drain's working. Basically, they're siphoning the health from the player character to themselves and kind of using it to heal themselves. And it kind of always bothered me that the drain condition was called drained, but inherently didn't do that kind of thing.
Right? It's like they're sucking your soul and gaining sustenance from it.
Yeah.
It's I've used that before, and you guys did not like that ability. I mean,
I mean,
definitely made you invested, but we're spicing up Undead right here.
I wouldn't say I didn't like it. I would say Nil got hit pretty hard with it, and he had a really hard time with. Neil always has a really hard time with rolls to recover from conditions.
Right. You can dish out those conditions, but you can't take conditions.
Exactly. Like if I get hit with a condition, I'm basically out for the whole fight because I can't get rid of it. In Drain 10, I got hit with right before I got hit with. I'm trying to think. I think it was a bleed condition, maybe. Right before it happened, right after the drain condition.
You got a bleed and a drain condition all in one. And
I could not get rid of that bleed condition. And it was like a drain 10. So like I was like down like 10 max HP or something. So yeah, I would say I didn't like it. I would say that Nil had a really bad time with it.
You were drained like what? Like drain 2 and it ended up being 10 HP based on your level or something like that?
Yeah.
Or it was just drain 1 would have taken 10 HP off your level if you were level 10.
Maybe it was drained 1. I don't remember.
Yeah. Drained is not a joke. And I like that it's only used. I think it's used the right amount of these different abilities.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite ability on the Ghost Bar is still the Malevolent Possession.
Yes, I was just about to say that one. You literally possess another creature, specifically a corporeal one. It's basically the possession spell, right? It lets you take control of them.
Which, by the way, is a 7th level spell.
Yeah. It does say too, except since the ghost doesn't have a physical body, it's unaffected by the restriction of the spell, which I don't recall what that restriction is.
The restriction would be something about waking up. I'm
not sure. So let's see, the possession says you send your mind and soul into the target's body, attempting to take control. The target must attempt a will save. You can choose to use the effects of a degree of success more favorable to the target if you prefer. While you're possessing a target, your own body is... Oh, that's probably what it is. Your own body is unconscious and can't wake up normally. It's because they're not...
You don't have a body.
Yeah.
That's so that's even better. So yeah, use that spell when you really want to scare your players. Possession is, I mean, as you've seen before, turning party members against each other in the middle of combat is definitely going to change your combat. Yeah, it's scary. Going toe-to-toe against mere duplicates or some party member getting possessed because, I mean, it takes so many other people out of the fight. If the main fighter is out of the fight, who's going to tank and who's going to break away and try to break that possession?
Right.
Somebody is going to be like, they're possessed, so I'm going to try to snap them out of it. Like, they're going to spend their entire turn trying to save that person.
I actually really like this telekinetic assault, too. The ghost cries out in pain and anguish as small objects and debris fly about a 30-foot emanation. Creatures in this area take 1d6 bludgeon damage plus 1d6 per 2 levels, subject to the basic reflex save. This is thematically, like, one of the things that I think of when I think of ghosts is the ghostly scream, right? Like, the what's the word? The shriek, I guess. You see in pop culture, like when a ghost comes out, they shriek and just the air vibrates around them and it causes,
when they wail like a banshee.
Wail. That's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Banshees are totally ghosts.
Yeah.
I'm surprised Banshee's not covered in the ghost class.
Well, they might be. Let's see. Let's go back here.
I'm looking up Banshee right now. It has the incorporeal spirit and undead, but it didn't fit in with other ghosts. A shame. That's a miss on their part. But they have the wail, which is like a soul chilling, wail that has like a silence effect.
Right.
I've
they
always
they kind of implement that here with the
it's
telekinetic assault. I mean, it's treated more as a telekinetic ability, but they are screaming or shrieking out in pain, and that shriek is what's causing the debris around them to fly
Mhm.
out. So obviously there's some kind of like vibrations in the air going on that's causing that debris to fly. So I think that's really cool. And apparently with one of these adventure paths or not adventure paths, but whatever they call it, Pathfinder Society things, Eyes of Empty Death, they added a bunch of other special abilities that are kind of cool, like Revenant down here. Not all ghosts try to possess the living. Some prefer to ride corpses instead, wrenching bodies from shallow graves to serve as their hosts. That's kind
oh
of
nice.
cool.
That
Um,
is great for a spooky season.
mm-hmm. Building, let's see. Phantasmagoria. Ghosts are rarely aware of the passage of time and see no difference between the homes they lived in long ago and the ruins they haunt now. Some ghosts can spread the delusion to others. Gives them the 3-action Phantasmagoria ability with a number of traits. The ghost causes all or part of its bound sight to look, sound, feel, and smell like a different kind of place. That one's really, it's basically an illusion ability. Um, Typically, the
If
ghost
you
can recreate only a handful of images, usually different versions of its bound sight as it appears during the ghost's life. This can't disguise any creatures in the area, though it can cause minor cosmetic changes, like causing a creature's clothing to appear nicer for a party or bloodstained for a battle. Any
oh
creature that
nice.
touches this illusion or uses the seek action to examine it can attempt to disbelieve it. Creatures can't leave the area of the illusion until they successfully disbelieve it. That's cool. That's really neat.
All of this right here would be perfect in a Call of Cthulhu campaign. I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
could totally see
so
that.
thematic. Investigating like cold spots or the haunted house, and just like all of that right there just kind of opens up to like what a good horror film is gonna deliver, like investigating in that area. I think even in fantasy, you guys really enjoyed with because you had the investigator class character with you, and just like delving into that haunted ghost town that I made for you
Mm-hmm.
guys. I should have used Cold Spot.
Memento Mori is really cool. 2-action ability. The ghost causes one creature within 30 feet to relive the ghost's death. The target must succeed
Ooh,
at a will save or see and feel what the ghost did, taking 1d4 persistent mental damage per 2 levels the ghost has. All other
Memento
creatures are
Mori.
concealed to the target until the persistent damage ends. That one's really cool. I
Remember,
envision like a ghost who was tortured in their life, and then basically the character has to relive that torturing over and over and over. And like Nil, who would never in their lifetime succeed at that will save to get rid of it.
that's such a good like artistic trope about reminding somebody of your inevitable death. I
Mm-hmm.
think that was what they said behind who was that famous Roman emperor? Oh my god.
I'm not sure. I mean, there was
There's the one who got assassinated.
Caesar.
Why am I drawing a blank?
Caesar.
See, uh, yeah, Caesar.
That's the only famous emperor, a Roman emperor I know. So.
Julius Caesar. You got it spot on. That was the one I was thinking of. Um, like when they came back from war, there was this like, I mean, it's probably fiction, but
Mm-hmm.
it was said that like there were people trailing behind them who were trying to remind them that you're only human, and eventually you're gonna die. Like, seek some hubris. So that's what that memento mori means. Is like inevitable death, basically.
Yeah.
That's
I mean,
such a
it
useful.
literally means moment of death. So.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That
all
fan.
these are really cool, and I'd be interested to play this, whatever this is, this Pathfinder number 165, Five Eyes of Empty Death. It sounds really freaking cool. In fact, what happens if I click on this?
We go by the book.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, it's part
those
of the
games
it's
are
part of the
amazing. I think they go
Abomination Vault's
from
adventure path. Interesting.
don't they go from like 1 to 20?
A lot of the adventure paths do typically, yeah, which is unique to Pathfinder 2e. Like most 5e adventures only go from like up to like 11th level at most, because the system tends to fall apart at higher levels, unfortunately.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, do you have any other advice to people who are looking to spice up their? I mean, I know you've used undead quite a bit in your campaign, so um, any
Uh,
like tips or
I'm
tricks
really
you found
hoping
along the
that
way?
one of the things that I'm really hoping is that undead, like a necromancer, gets its own kind of feature in Pathfinder. One of my favorites that kind of it was a spell that was kind of recently released with I think just the advanced player's guide was Animate Dead, and it was kind of like a quick fix to what was missing as far as like undead goes.
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing a lot of players using undead. We had a cleric in our party who was using the undead, and they seemed kind of unsatisfied with the action economy.
Yeah, but they were also new player, which wasn't quite
They were
used
also
to the
playing
bash economy to begin
Marshall.
with. So
They were also playing Marshall, which
yeah,
is very. It's you've played a hunter and you've had a pet, and I think it's the exact same way, where
yeah,
you've got to decide what the action economy is going to be, and it takes a lot of consideration.
hmm,
And so I think there needs to be more undead feats for Pathfinder 2e, because in the core rulebook there's a particular page where it just straight up says you can have 4 undead companions at a time.
I think a
And
necromancer, uh, while I think it makes the most sense as an archetype, as I usually say, I do,
that is
I do,
that's your catchphrase.
I do see Paizo eventually releasing at some point a necromancer class, just kind of like they did with the Oracle and the Thaumaturge. Like they tend to, it's definitely a popular. Hate to use the word overload the word archetype, but a popular archetype in story, right, is the necromancer. Um, and
So there wasn't traditionally a necromancer in 3.5 or Pathfinder 1. So far it looks like Pathfinder 2e is going the direction of kind of remaking all of those classic classes.
mm,
And necromancer wasn't really
mm,
among them.
interesting.
So it'll be really interesting to see, yeah, because
They,
wizards had access to feats to make great necromancers, and clerics had access to the same feats. And so it was kind of like a difference between options of spells, because both wizards and clerics had a plethora of spells to choose from. And so in those 3.5 Pathfinder 1, having a necromancer was easy. An action economy, it was broken. Like
yeah,
between a druid having a huge zoo of creatures and a necromancer having a graveyard full of undead, like they kind of fourth edition and fifth edition tried to fix all that by removing all that action economy, and not letting you have a bunch of extra lackeys.
hmm,
So I'm really hoping that Pathfinder will kind of release, like you said, at least an archetype or some feats. That way, sorcerer, wizard, and clerics will have access to really making a build that is like that, or with the direction of archetypes, having that as an access.
yeah. I mean, it sounds like we need to do a necromancer archetype homebrew, but
I think
if I
so.
were
That's
to
a great
do
idea.
that, I think the way I would approach that would be first create a number of feats for the different spellcasting classes to begin with, and then create an archetype. Excuse me, that not only has its own unique stuff, but also can optionally use the additional feats that you create there, right, from those other
Hmm.
classes. Um, Sort of like the assassin archetype has its own unique stuff, but then it uses a lot of. You can also optionally take a lot of feats from like the rogue class, right? Um, I think that's probably the route I would do if I were to homebrew one.
Hmm.
I'm really excited for the Book of the Dead. I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah.
There's no they announced there's not going to be any classes in there, which is a bit sad. But I'm
Did they
hoping we
say
get some more
if they have
spells
any
and feats and
archetypes?
whatnot in there.
Did they say if they were going to have any archetypes in that book?
I can't remember if they said archetypes or not. I don't want to speak out of turn there. I know they
Okay.
specifically said there were no classes, but I don't recall if they said there was going to be archetypes or not. But at least, at the
So
very least, I hope there's more spells and feats added.
So all my advice has been to GMs, some advice to players. If you're playing in a Halloween one shot, you can definitely spook it up. Clerics have a real easy time in Pathfinder 2e to run a necromancer. It's the easiest way to do it right now. Although you can play a necromantic wizard, you just need to, if you're playing a one shot, take that ritualist as an archetype. Ritualist will get you the necessary rituals you'll need to kind of summon your own undead. So if you look at the archetype for ritual, it gives you some free ones off the bat, and you should be able to talk to your GM about getting some undead in there.
I will say that if you are a player interested in playing a necromancer or just a general spellcaster who dabbles in necromancy, be sure to talk it out with your fellow players and your GM ahead of time, because they tend to butt heads with other types of character builds. So if you have a paladin in your party, for instance, it's probably not going to go well. If you have what's some other bad combinations? Like if you have
rogues and paladins are bad combos, but with necromancers, clerics, and paladins
Yeah.
of good faiths usually have a hard time, and even some druids have a hard time. But you guys just have to play it Diablo 2 style, where you understand that sometimes in order to face off against a super evil bad, you need to use something just a little bit more evil.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said though, you got to talk to your fellow players and make sure everyone's comfortable with that. Some people are really like to lean into that RP side of things, and it just ends up creating table conflicts you'd rather not deal with. Halloween one shots are cool, Kazuma.
As if you're looking for a Halloween one shot, there's probably one in your area. Look at your nearby comic shops.
Yeah.
Down here in Southern California, we've got a bar that's kind of dedicated to playing games, and that tavern has
Gamecraft.
Gamecraft Brewing. They have Halloween kind of stuff going on there. It's pretty
Paizo
common for
actually just released. Paizo just released a one shot. I forget the name of it. It's got a funny name. It's like shot to the brains or something like that, or shot to the gut or something like that. But it's basically showcasing the guns and gears, specifically the guns from the new Guns and Gears book, in a Halloween themed one shot with zombies and whatnot involved. Looks really fun. Maybe we'll put one on. Who knows? But it definitely, I think it's out already. I'll have to pick that up on their website. But there are four, I believe it's built for 4 players, and there's 4 pre-generated characters, all gunslingers, which is awesome. So yeah, definitely check that out if you have the opportunity to. I'd be interested to hear people's feedback on it. I know I haven't got a chance to play it yet, but it sounds really cool from how they described it. So,
and I'll be super psyched to finally be able to talk about my Call of Cthulhu game will be happening starting this Tuesday for spooky season. So,
another announcement we have. I have gotten almost the final copy for the companion rules that we're going to be putting up on the website. The last thing I need to do before we ship it live is I need to adjust a few more things in the copy, but also I need to create some example stat blocks, which in WordPress is kind of a pain in the butt. So bear with me as I tighten up those bows and get that out. But I think you guys are really going to like it. I've shared it with a few friends and peers internally, and I think a lot of them like it so far. So
it has so much potential, especially because of its roots that it's coming from. And speaking of things that you can find on our website, John, can you take down the Nethies thing so we can get a look at this beautiful art?
Sure.
This art is from Ashley. We've put their link before, and we've shouted out to them on Twitter. Just wanted to show off their amazing art. They are open for commissions, so to you players who are looking to get your character done up in Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder style, I mean, just look at that art. It's gorgeous. They are accepting commissions, so if you like to pay to have somebody make your your character come to life, these guys are amazing to work with. Can't recommend them enough.
They're affordable too, right?
It was very affordable.
Yeah.
They were very reasonable and super professional to work with. After dealing with a few illustrators who were not upfront. These people were just, they had all their web pages already set up. They had a great portfolio to look at. So it was just perfect lining up, finding them. So, and I'm definitely gonna be using them in the future because I've got some more art planned.
Is that a helmet or a skull next to the sword at the bottom?
So there, I asked for like, so this is Ancestral Deity. For those of you guys who haven't checked out the our webpage yet, this is an option to choose if you're choosing an alignment that is um, more pagan in idea. So they worship their ancestors instead of a straight deity. And here you can see they've laid down their weapons, and this lizard folk has taken off his helmet because they're in a place of worship. So they're kind of that's like they're prostrated in a pose of reverence. So that's their gear that they have laid down.
So first of all, I love that helmet. I think it's a really cool design for a helmet.
That's the coolest spiky helmet. Like my personal thing was I asked for a lot of bones, and you look, there's like skulls and bones everywhere, and I was so happy. Yeah, it's a blood sacrifice. That is what they're going to do.
Yep.
That is what lizard folk do. So their ancestors definitely want blood sacrifices. It makes them happy. And in a typical fashion of ancestral magic, the more people who die in your family who are spellcasters kind of add on to the magic that you can then borrow from.
Mm-hmm.
So these are ancestors who don't move on from the material plane. They're kind of bound.
Yeah, so I guess we should also clarify that on the website, what we have released right now is specifically the quote-unquote deity. It's really an ancestral deity, but it's the talking about the anathemas, all that stuff. There's no mechanics in it right now, really, but we are going to be releasing soon a cleric path. I don't know what they call them in Pathfinder 2e. What's the cleric subclasses called?
Doctrine.
Cleric doctrines, specifically for this deity. So
I was playing around with the shaman. Shaman just doesn't hit right, so I gotta find something that's gonna feel right with using ancestral magic. So we're still working out the tweaks.
Yeah, but we'll have that at some point. Mm-hmm. I know I keep saying it, and I know I keep failing to deliver it, but I am going to be doing a test stream of preparations for Shifting Sands for YouTube Live, because we may end up switching to that. Still don't know yet. Won't know until I get a chance to try it out. But yeah, I mean, if you see it pop up on YouTube, feel free to jump on in. If not, don't feel bad. It's just me playing around with the tools, see what's available to us, see how it works, etc. Make sure it works with the software we use for doing the stream and everything. So we still haven't forgotten about the guns and gears deep dives yet either. It's mostly been my fault. I've been extremely busy and admittedly been slacking a bit on content. So hopefully we can get to that sooner rather than later. But at this point, I don't really want to make any promises of exactly when, because I'm just my weeks are so packed full right now that I don't even know when the hell I'm going to get to anything. So
my load is pretty heavy with a bunch of extra games, because we've got the Cthulhu shot. I just took on a new group of vegan Dungeon and Dragon people. So shout out to those guys who are interested in me throwing a game for them.
We are
in
also,
addition to all the other games that we got going down.
We are also going to be finished, or at least doing the next session of probably 3 of the Fate actual play.
Gotta finish that.
If someone else wants to join in, they're more than welcome to. We're at a point in the story where introducing a new character could be a possibility. So if you've always wanted to try Fate and you always wanted to give it a go, hit us up in the Discord. We'll link the Discord in the description of the VOD on YouTube, so you can check that out. Jack runs a game every Tuesday, more of a long-running campaign called Tagasea that we mention all the time in the stream. It's Pathfinder 2e. If that's something that interests you, let us know. I run a West Marches style game that has kind of been slow burning right now because a lot of people have been really busy and we don't have a whole lot of people in the Discord yet. So always looking for more people there to start playing that more often. Pretty player driven in that, there's not like a set schedule if we play this day or this month or whatever. It's more like when people want to play, we decide a time, we decide what we're going to do, and we hash it out and go for it. So it's kind of more ad hoc than something more consistent.
That's exactly how a West March game should be run, for those of you who are... And then we also have a Starfinder game who we recently have... John doesn't have time to play because they're going to be doing so much other work. So hit us up That GM will be looking for some additional people. We'll miss you.
I know. Maybe one day I'll come back to it. I do love that system though. As much as I prefer Pathfinder 2e from a mechanic standpoint, I do enjoy playing Starfinder, so I do kind of miss playing it, but can only do
Starfinder's
so
fun.
much. I'm already super busy, so I had to, cut my line. It was unfair to you guys not being able to join all the time, and it's same kind of thing with Tagasea. Like I'm not leaving Tagasea by any means, but I feel bad when I have to miss a session because of work or other stuff going on, and it's just I don't know. I didn't
I
want to
feel
do
that
that again, so
feel that same feeling that you feel when I'm in another game and I can't commit, or because of work or travel and our appointments, and I'm late to a session. I feel really bad because I feel like I'm taken away from the other players. So I totally get what you're feeling.
yeah. For those of you who don't know, I'm in the video game industry, and we have we're notorious for certain
Crunch.
times where we have a lot to do and we can't, it takes a lot of our free time as well away from us as well. So, it is what it is. I'm trying to be more consistent, at least with Tagasea, and in doing so, I thought, I if I'm going to try to be more consistent with Tagasea, I need to free up time elsewhere, so to tackle the stuff I need to do. So I made the hard decision that I had to leave that campaign. Like I said, maybe one day I'll be back, but as of now, they get an open slot, so hit them up.
So 31st next Sunday is a holiday. John and I will be off, so there won't be a stream, but we will be pushing out more content.
Yep.
So check us out on all of our socials, from Twitter to Reddit. We'll be releasing new content and probably pushing another pre-record to try to get some more stuff out. So the next time we'll be meeting again, whether on YouTube or Twitch, will be the 7th, and we'll have a whole new list up on the website. We will post what our next videos are going to be.
The 7th, that week will also be our 20th stream of Finding Paths. So, probably we're gonna try to think of something special to do for that. I don't know what yet, but
We talked about this. We have something special planned. I don't know if we're ready to talk about it yet.
I don't think so.
I'm looking at the emails. We did say we had something big
Okay.
for it.
We'll talk about it some more. I have some other ideas too that we might be able to throw in there as well. So yeah, we'll think of something special. But yeah. Any last remarks you want to make before we cut off here, Jack?
Don't forget to check us out. If we are mostly a audio podcast, so check us out on Spotify.
Yes. The more listeners we get on Spotify, the better analytics we get, the better we can tailor this stuff. Like, subscribe, all that jazz when the VOD hits on YouTube and Odyssey and whatnot. Check us out on Twitter, Discord, Instagram. We're still slacking on Instagram. We really need to get some more content up there. Sorry for that for those of you who are IG fans, but we're working on it. But yeah, until next time, happy gaming. Take care.
Bye, guys.